Good morning, everybody. My name is Richard Brent. I'm the editor-in-chief of Briefing Magazine, and welcome to this final special session of Briefing 5P 2020. That is a conference that we've been running here at Briefing Magazine for the past 6 years that I've been in charge of the publication. And this time it is, of course, virtual. This event has always been centered around supporting the evolution of more joined up legal businesses, finding connections and shared goals across potential silos within those businesses, within law firms, and fostering a collaboration practices and also a collaboration mindset. That's a mission that we stress pretty much every year that we are running this, but of course this year it's perhaps more of the moment than ever before, as firms continue to respond to some very obvious, rather new challenges, as well as some of the more familiar ones that we've talked about quite a lot in the past. This year's strategic Ps, they tend to change year on year, but this year's Ps are process, pricing, and you and your teams, the people, on the road to optimized performance and also profitability. And this webcast in the series, as I say, the final one, is being run in partnership with BigHand, whose solutions and expertise touch all of the Ps in some way, although today's session majors on pricing, the P for pricing. Bit of housekeeping, please do ask any questions about what you're hearing as I'm talking to our guests this morning. You can do that, of course, in the chat at the bottom of the screen, and I'll pass them along in the course of the conversation. The session is being recorded this morning for publication on our website, briefing.co.uk. And if you wish to, you can, of course, tweet us your thoughts as well at Briefing Legal using the hashtag Briefing5P. So this morning, as I say, it's P for pricing after a fashion, but also perhaps more so V for value and the processes surrounding how law firms and their clients are going about understanding that and sharing their thoughts around it. The session is titled Climbing the Value Ladder. And I think it does feel to me like this is an appropriate one to be finishing 2020 on. Other words have probably dominated the headlines this year, but I think value is something that's been much on everybody's minds, probably personally as well as professionally. The value of people, of course, the value of time and of work. And we're talking, as I say, the work of ensuring client value this morning. So we're going to start off with the client's, the in-house perspective on this subject. And I'm delighted to be joined by two in-house leaders this morning. I've got Natalie Salunke here, who is the head of legal at RVU, which is a group of online companies that work to empower consumers by helping them compare home services and financial products with brands including Uswitch and Money. Natalie was formerly the head of legal for FleetCor, and she joined RVU in April this year, at around the same time actually as she was talking to me for a previous session. She's also worked at Enterprise Rent-A-Car and at NetSuite, which is now part of Oracle, and also at Vendor. She was group head of legal and company secretary at Vendor as well as of course starting her career on the private practice side at Taylor Wessing. And we've also got Marc Anderson, who is managing counsel at the business and landlord insurance provider Simply Business. Prior to that, he was at the Royal London Group, and he's got a particular interest in legal operations. He was part of the legal leadership team that initiated the move to a new operating model over at Royal London. He's also fairly recently joined Simply Business during the lockdown period. And I should say he's also an occasional columnist for Briefing Magazine. So you may have seen his face there before, if not elsewhere. Hi, Marc and Natalie. Thank you for joining us this morning. So I'd like to start by asking both of you, each of you, a very broad question. What does value mean to you when it comes to legal service delivery? To what extent is value the price that you're paying? And you know, what else is key if it's not all about price when you're coming to evaluate the value that a firm presents? Maybe I can start with Natalie.
Sure, so I was just unmuting. So a lot of questions there, right? I think for me, the main thing is how it feels. And I think we touched on that on some of the prep calls for this. And I think, you only know what value is. It's quite a personal thing, I think, to you and your organisation and the culture of values that you have as well as your organisation. I think the way that it feels to me is value is where, as a client, you feel like you've sort of been given more than you paid for. So it's not just meeting the kind of expected service, it's kind of going over and above, and that's where that value creation, lies. Best price doesn't always mean, best value. I think, Marc had some really good points on this in our prep call about, big law firm versus small law firm, and what your expectations are do vary. And I think it's important for law firms to recognise that, and purely because you're the biggest and the most expensive or the best doesn't always mean you're the natural kind of fit for the client that you're approaching. And I think it really depends on what you're trying to get out of that sort of situation. And so, beating people on price isn't always going to get you the best service. I think we know that from, just being a consumer of products themselves. And I think there needs to be that natural kind of fairness in that relationship. And so not only does it need to be fair, it also needs to be transparent. And I think, clients can sometimes expect that law firms should know what they want. And equally, some law firms go and think that they know what the client wants, but is either really truly communicating what it is that they're after, and going back to your question, what value is for them. I think that's a really important part of, that dynamic. So I thought I'd throw those out for now, and I'm sure Marc has got some more thoughts there.
Good opening thoughts, thank you. Marc, let's come to you. What do you think? Do you agree, or is it something different for you?
No, I agree. All really valid points, and absolutely I agree with those. I mean, it's interesting because value, in terms of price, if price is part of value, that I don't think it ever wouldn't be that. But if you look at price in itself, it's not just the what, it's the how. So what makes up the price? So the value might come through innovative price setting. And a mechanism where you're sharing the pain and then the gain. So if you're talking of an M&A deal and whether it proceeds all the way through. So looking for, for me, it's so boring getting an hourly rate. Let's look at innovation. Let's look at making the price something a bit more interesting and that works going forward and incentivizes good behaviours on all sides. So there's a lot that you can do with price. But, we could go off in various directions, Richard, on the value that sits beyond the price. So it's the upscaling of the in-house lawyer, for instance. If this is a bigger transaction or a relationship, a partnership that law firm or that legal provider wants to grow, where is the value going forward? It's upskilling the in-house function. It's learning off the transaction. It's not a provision of service. It's so much more than that potentially. And the best legal providers will be thinking about where can the value be added beyond just getting the job done. Do a great job, but that's a given actually. What are we standing to gain as an in-house function in terms of our lawyers gaining knowledge, and also all the bits around the edges as well, the use of technology and applications, if that's relevant, and how might that be embedded into an in-house team. We get onto things like effective and targeted horizon scanning. I could go on and on, but because I know we're short on time, but those are a few things to think about.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll touch on those in some more detail as the conversation continues. Is it something then that Natalie, you used the word, it's something that you feel as much as anything, which I suspect is something that it's quite hard to measure. When you put one law firm up against another, perhaps it's not. But is value something that you can measure, that you do measure, or that you're exploring the possibility of doing so?
Yeah, sure. And I think there are already tools out there that help you analyse what your legal spend is. So I think a lot that talks about spend, and if you see value in sort of saving money or feeling like you're getting a good service for your buck, then I think there's a lot of those sort of tools that such as like a Perio, which gives you transparency into the law firms and how they're billing you, whether they're writing off time. It gives you insights in terms of how you kind of fare against other kind of different companies in your sector. Also, you know, is that the right kind of price point for that law firm for that type of work? You know, you're starting to get a lot more tools with that sort of insight, which is great if you're focusing on the kind of cost value sort of savings element to it. I think ultimately you've got to kind of set your own metrics, and I think a lot of that of what value is goes back to what I was saying before, is that how does your business measure value, and what are the metrics that it cares about, and how as a legal function can you align to that sort of value sort of mechanism and flow that through to your sort of supply chain. So I think, you know, yes, it is definitely something you can measure. I think for me, I probably do less of the metrics because I have those tools that I've just mentioned that talk about the actual spend element.
Yep.
I've got my spreadsheets that I go through with the accounts every sort of you know, month, and I also look at, you know, what we're writing off, and actually I do look at sort of I do actually record my time, and maybe that's something that's worth talking about. So me and my team, unfortunately, do have to record our time. We do put it against certain matters. And what it allows us to do is that we kind of look at certain kind of probably big items and some smaller stuff that's taking up our time, and actually are able to put a price tag on it. And then we're much better placed to kind of go, well, is that better placed with us? Is it a law firm? And actually, you know, once we've got a bit of a figure, you can have much more open conversations with legal providers and go, hey, I've got this stuff. It's taking my time. I value my time. It's got this price tag. What can you do with that? Is there something that you can do about it? But for me, it's also sort of supply management, and I hate to kind of say that in terms of, you know, law firms are a supplier. It is a partnership, and that's why I think those supplier conversations are totally you know, important, and that kind of sort of transparency of how you felt the relationship went, and that can be in terms of a service delivery, and you can have SLAs that you measure against. Yep. It can be in terms of pricing, and whether you actually kept to your pricing when you said you were going to offer something at a fixed fee and you went over it, or you kind of changed the scope a little. And also, you know, just how did you feel? And it goes back to what Marc was saying about the kind of proactive relationship that you have with your firm, and whether that's something you value, and if they are looking out for you and caring for you as a client and horizon scanning, but in a bespoke way to you, well, what value do you place on that? And I think the scorecard you then put together is going to be quite personal to you, but I think it really does matter, sort of taking a step back and thinking what is important to you as that starting point, rather than Marc and I going, yeah, we've got some stuff out of the box that we can give you.
Yeah. Okay. Marc, what would your scorecard involve? If is it something that you try to do to measure, and maybe that point about the different types of law firms as well, that you wouldn't measure perhaps the one law firm in quite the same way as another one?
Yeah,
delivering for you.
I think so. I think, look, for where the model, where there's extensive use of external legal providers, where it's a more sophisticated kind of engagement, I think there's value in it, and I've seen it done. And coming back to Natalie's point about supplier management, you're right. I look at them as partners rather than suppliers, but it is those kind of almost procurement principles that you apply. And like organisations like CLOP, you know, legal professionals and procurement professionals are kind of aligning now on how to measure value. And I remember at Royal London, we did that. We looked at all of the law firms, and we made an assessment on, you know, how important are we to them, and how important are they to us? And through applying those, and part of that was assessing kind of where's the value be, where do we feel we're getting value, and where do we feel we can get it going forward? Who's better positioned to do it? And it's not so much a, you know, we're not there to take the mick and say, look, we just want to grab as much as we can, and that's what we're in it for, because again, that just encourages bad behaviours, and it's going to sink a long-term relationship. But by applying those kind of procurement principles, you are thinking about value, and you are thinking about how you measure that value as well. And come back to Natalie's point, it is with it, the model starts, I guess, you do it manually and you look to automate it later on. So it does start with basically making sure as an in-house function you're tracking what you get. And we were, again, at Royal London, stressing to all lawyers, if you're getting anything beyond the service, can we make this clear across the team, and then make it available as well if it's something for sharing. But it is that point, it's ensuring that it's recognised. And I'd encourage legal service providers to almost present or show off about what they're giving, and to the GC or the legal operations head, this is what we've done, and this is what we're given, this is what we could do. It's great. Share that MI, share that data, and be proactive in terms of getting that conversation going.
Okay. That's interesting, because that's my next question was going to be, are there any behaviours or approaches that, or things that are typical that you see in law firms that sort of frustrate their articulation of value to you? Is that one of them then, just them not sort of telling you what there is that they could do?
I'll jump in again. Yeah, I've probably what was coming next. I guess so. I think we previously spoke about this. Lawyers themselves aren't always very good at marketing or selling. I know that the resources are there probably at certain legal services providers where you've got marketeers or legal operation professionals who are more involved now. And I'd say that, there should be someone who is probably quite good at it, but also responsible for that level of the relationship. So that articulation and being proactive. And if I make a call and ask a question of something of a lawyer, if you just follow up with an email, what a great impression that sets as well. I might not necessarily be expecting it. I might just want a quick call about something, but this follow-up, it's like, nice touch. It's those types of things where you're like, that's great. That's just how to build that. That's business, isn't it? It extends beyond law. That's business. That's how to do good business and how to build up business relationships. So my frustration is sometimes, if lawyers aren't being particularly proactive in terms of managing and growing those relationships.
Mm-hmm. Natalie, how about you when it comes to what law firms do or don't do to help this conversation happen in the best way possible?
Yeah, so I think there's two sort of things that kind of echo what sort of Marc was saying. I think the first is that law firms don't always lend themselves in terms of their setup to getting the right people, having the right conversations, and I think part of that is are they drawing the technical people when they're actually trying to sell in some legal tech, or are they, and is that actually how the client wants to be sold to? So I think again it goes to that kind of conversation. It's like we can all assume that there's one way of delivering a presentation or delivering a sell pitch, but actually if you kind of thing is it you just want an out-of-the-box solution, you don't really want a conversation about it, and some people don't have the time for that and don't want to invest the time in that, and that's completely fine as well. But I think yet again it's about kind of knowing, and actually I think that's where salespeople and account managers that you get in traditional company models actually do much better by their business, because they're actually more focused in that nuance of how to kind of get the message across. And I think law firms, there is that kind of hierarchy of client partner is the be all and end all, and can be the salesperson, can be the most expert kind of lawyer, can be the best kind of managing relationships person that there is in one. And I think as much as we all aspire to that as lawyers, because we are perfectionists and we all like to think that we're well-rounded and that's why we're here, sometimes we probably have to be a bit kind of more honest with ourselves and go, I'm probably not the best person for this job. And that kind of comes to the second point, which is I think the hierarchy in firms is actually sort of stifling younger talent and other talent with other skill sets to bring to the table, by saying actually if you come into this kind of funnel as a lawyer in private practice, for example, or even in-house to some example as well, you're not really allowed that exposure to the client in, if you having just done a really good university degree, got your first, you're being launched into a business. If you're in a startup and you're in your early 20s, it'll be pretty much roll up your sleeves, get on with it and make it happen. When you look at the kind of legal sphere, I think we're so focused on that quality of advice and making sure it's absolutely correct, and that we're kind of making sure that we are the front of our organisations, that I think that takes away from the creativity that people could bring to the table, which is actually more intuitive and authentic, and actually matching people from a law firm perspective with clients that they have that natural synergy with, a natural relationship with, and empathy that actually isn't but necessarily being utilised to its full potential because of the law firm model. So I think there is that which you're seeing more progressive firms getting more comfortable with, and you actually probably see it more at some of the high street firm level in terms of that kind of innovation, in terms of just allowing people to just kind of be themselves and get on with their clients, but also at the kind of larger firm level where you can actually invest in that infrastructure of different roles and responsibilities, and actually have people kind of going, what, play to your strengths, and actually to the client, that can be a really slick kind of output and something that we kind of feel a bit better supported by.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. We're of course going to hear from a law firm in a moment, as you'd expect. We had one question come through though from Kirsty Shenton, and I think you've just answered her question on your part, Natalie. Please, could I ask what good looks like? What about for you, Marc? You've obviously talked about some of the simple things that firms could do. For example, you talked about that follow up email. What though else, big or small, sort of marks a firm out for you, or has done?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of principles out there in terms of what I just consider good business practice, and I mean, don't underestimate the impact of working. I think Natalie touched on this with people that are likable and empathetic at this time as well. So the empathy around the instructions going out during the pandemic, for instance, could revolve around the fact that the company's struggling in certain areas. So a wider empathy is always appreciated, and it's noted as well in terms of what's going on. So that understanding of what's going on at human level and obviously at a business level as well. So an appreciation of the wider commercials, really impressive. That's what really good looks like. And as I said, it's just anticipating what comes next. It's the proactive, raising things that are specific to the business, which shows again a good commercial knowledge and where the law firm can add value. And I say add value at cost to us, because it could and would lead to an instruction potentially, but growing that relationship as a whole and not just kind of disappearing once the instruction's dealt with, because be honest, you'll be forgotten about then. There's plenty of other people that want to get involved. So it's a competitive marketplace.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Marc. We're going to we're unpacking some of this some more a bit later on in the hour that we've got. I think it's only right though that we hear from a law firm now. So I'm going to say thank you, Marc and Natalie, for those first initial thoughts, and I'll see you again later. And pleased to welcome Steve Arnold, who is head of commercial finance at CMS. Steve's worked in the legal sector for over 15 years. And following the merger between CMS, Allswang and Nabarro, which was back in 2017, he joined what was then the newly formed commercial finance team, and he now heads up a 7-strong team of pricing and commercial finance professionals. Hi, Steve.
Hi, thanks.
How are you this morning?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good, thank you. Very good. So you've had the benefit of hearing what the other side had to say first.
So it's always a good position to be in.
I'm gonna start by asking you potentially to criticise yourself. What's not necessarily obviously your firm, but what sort of challenges do you see? I mean, your initial session is about articulating value. So what challenges do you see for firms generally when it comes to doing that, basically?
Yeah, I do have the very fortunate position of being after the two heads of legal there. So I'm going to pick up obviously on the strands that they've talked about, but they are generally the things that I believe in as well, which is the key issue, I think, for most law firms in articulating value is that they don't understand the value inherently that they're providing, or that there's a mismatch between where value comes from and where it's perceived to come from. So I think the first key challenge is getting the right people to understand the value that's being delivered, and often, as we've heard, the value comes from areas outside just the legal service provision, right? So clients expect the job to be done, and they expect it to be done efficiently and effectively and accurately, and for it to be legally robust, etc., etc. And so that's what they're paying for. So there is value, there's inherent value in those things. And Marc said, Marc touched on these things: fixed fees, risk sharing, the way you price innovatively. There is inherent value in those things. But the majority of the value, I think, comes from the other things that you do as a firm, and the other services, the other products that you provide, but also just the relationship that you have. We talked a lot previously about value being it would definitely a very subjective thing. It's very personal, both individually. Marc and Natalie probably will value very different things, but even within the same organization, different contacts that you're working with, points of contact that you have, may very well have different values themselves, and they may see value in different things. So the key really to understanding how you articulate your value is understanding what you are doing, understanding the value you're bringing, and then understanding what your client values, because you don't want to kitchen sink them with everything. And equally, you don't want to provide things that they're not going to see value in, which either are a waste of time for you and them, are costly and not returning the kind of, the return on the investment that the firm needs from provision of that service or product. There's also a bit empty for the client as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we talked, didn't we, about how the lawyer could potentially be so involved in the piece of work they might not see the wider picture of relationship value. But then, of course, on the other side, Natalie mentioned, it shouldn't just be for a client relationship partner to be responsible for value either. So I suppose there must be some challenge around deciding what part everybody plays in the whole value equation.
And understanding all of those and how all those things loop together. And I think making sure that the lawyers understand that value comes from the other areas as well, because more often than not, we see, value adds being thrown in as, as freebies, and they're just there as like a sweetener for the deal. And actually, there's an awful lot of value that we're creating in those additional services as well. So, and there are multiple points of contact with the client. So, for example, at CMS, our D&I team, for example, will work with our clients to structure their D&I strategy, and we'll support them in delivering events and organising events. It's different at the moment. Obviously, those events are virtual and they're not quite as they were before, but we're adapting and we're changing. Delivering on those sorts of D&I strategies. Our client management team I've been working with a lot of our clients who are looking to innovate at the moment. We've all had to change the way we work this year. We've all had to innovate in our business delivery model to some degree. And our client management team have been working with clients to help them with their innovation strategy, for example, and where they can benefit and where they can improve. Our events teams help run events. There's so many touch points that aren't just lawyer GC or lawyer or in-house lawyer, that all form part of that. But then particularly important what Natalie said, I think that's a really good takeaway for all law firms on this, which is there are so many people, even in the provision of the legal service, that can provide good insight and that can be personable. And, what we can boil value down to lots of different pots, services, training, secondments, horizon scanning, all those sorts of things that we do. But ultimately, they're all a bit vacuous and empty if you don't have a personal relationship with your client, if you don't understand your client. And I think Marc touched on it just at the end, which is just there's a lot to be said at the moment about being just nice and having those touch points. We've actually found, one of the things we found was we're getting a lot of contact from various clients, GCs, and other legal contacts of clients who feel isolated, and they're looking to us to help do events, networking, all those sorts of things. I mean, those things are incredibly valuable at the moment to the relationship. And as law firms, we should be being proactive and helping our clients out, both personally and professionally.
Okay, interesting. And with those all those different areas of added value, you mentioned like a list of them there. Have you did you have to prioritize which of those you see most value in offering, either because it's what the clients are telling you they want, or because it's what you do best? Or
yeah, I mean, it has to be tailored to the client's needs, and that's a given. I think you have to tailor the offering, and it has to be beneficial to the relationship and to the client. But you need to understand what you're doing. So, at CMS, we've been running a project for most of this year now to sort of try and piece together all of these parts, which might not necessarily have a natural link internally. Our D&I and our tech and innovation team might not necessarily have that much day-to-day interaction with one another, especially at the moment when everybody's at home. But bringing them together into, we are the value add services. We've got training, we've got events, we've got our knowledge teams, we've got our L&D teams, we've got our D&I, we've got all those sorts of teams, bringing them together as one, almost like a separate practice group in a way, so that they are a service delivery unit in themselves, understanding the cost to the firm of providing those services, understanding the value in those services. Some of those values are easy to quantify when you look at the market and you can see other offerings that are similar, but some of them are very difficult to quantify from a value perspective. Obviously, I'm an accountant, I'm a pricing person, I like to put a value on everything, but some of those things just are inherently valuable, and there's no monetary value. You just have to appreciate that there is a benefit to the client for doing them, and that those are things like picking up the phone and talking and being a good relationship person.
Yeah. And do you, we talked before about how these things might be differentiating now, but potentially, in the future, that these things will become sort of expected in just the same way as the quality legal services is expected, and we say that so often now. Do you see any other sort of forms of differentiation on the horizon, or do you think at some point it will just be that lots and lots of firms are doing all the right things?
Yeah, the end of the rainbow, I guess, is there's a point at which these things will over time dilute in their differentiating powers. Soon everybody will be offering all these things, and certainly that's the case if you look across the top 10, whatever, the top 10, 15, 20 firms, and even beyond that. Most of those things are on offer. Marc touched on this as well, I think, when he said it's absolutely important that we recognize that different firms are going to be able to offer different levels of things. Very small boutique firms aren't going to be able to offer the same sort of value add services and products that some of the Magic Circle do, for example. But everybody can pick up the phone, and everybody can have a good relationship, and everybody can build on those relationships and be personable and be nice, and ultimately I think that's what most people are looking for. Over time though, those things remain. That sort of relationship you have will remain even when all the other things, I think, start to diminish, and they become less differentiating in the service offering that you have when everybody's doing training and everybody's doing horizon scanning and so on.
Okay, thank you. A final one. Are there any new ways in which you are trying to talk to clients about this? The actual mechanism for understanding their take on value, or is it just about as you say, being nice and communicating well?
I think the point about value adds as a service, I think, is that they will constantly be evolving, and there's constantly going to be new ways of generating value, because like we said, they diminish, I think, in value over time, and that people get used to them. It's like the air freshener, you notice it for a few days, and then after that you don't really notice the smell. I think that's the same with service delivery. So it's really important that you ensure that you're tracking those things and that you're reporting on them so that they remain at the fore. But then it's also really important that you seek opportunities and developments where you can. And I think probably eventually we're going to end up in a situation where the key value is anticipating your clients' needs, not just meeting the current ones. And those things only come from having that close, trusted advisor style relationship that you have with your firm, that you have with your clients. Sorry. But there's always opportunities. One of the things that we've found particularly useful as a big tech sector firm, Allswang, that we merged with in 2017, came with a very strong, very renowned tech sector offering, but we don't have a US office at CMS at the moment, so it's difficult for us in normal times to get in front of new clients in Silicon Valley, for example, because it's very expensive for us to keep flying people over for meetings and flying back, and they want face-to-face meetings. And the last 7 months, for example, I was talking to our Clive Greengrass, our head of tech media and telecom sector, who was saying this is great because now I can get in front of all of these these clients in Silicon Valley because it's all virtual, and there's that barrier to entry has been removed, and he can start to build up those relationships or continue those relationships as this sort of virtual world becomes more normal. So, you know, it's about seeking opportunities where they present themselves and making the most of it and trying to get ahead of the game, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Steve. Now, you're going to stay with us, and Marc and Natalie are going to join us again. And we are also going to welcome Tom Spelling, who is the product director for matter pricing at BigHand. And Tom's worked in legal tech products for 11 years, and his focus at the moment is BigHand's matter pricing tool, BigHand Evaluate. And he's dedicated to building a deeper understanding of the market needs around matter pricing, and spends most of his time, he says, engaged with law firms to find out what works, what doesn't, and what BigHand can do to make life easier for firms' clients, which of course is a big part of what we've been talking about. So, hi Tom, I'm going to come to you first, as you've not spoken yet. What's interested you most about what you've heard so far this morning?
All of it, on the basis that it's all relevant to the sort of stated goal of my role. I think what has been interesting is the way that people talk about value, sort of value pricing. How I've interpreted the majority of this morning's conversation has been actually more what I would look at as value selling. And I think that's something that we see a lot of our law firm clients wrangling with, because they're in a situation where they've given the client a price and the client is now wondering, you know, what's the added value around all of this? So there is, and Steve kind of mentioned this scrabble to find freebies and so on to offer around the edges to differentiate the service. But I think true value pricing is something that we still see people struggling to get right. And actually, I'd question how many of the law firms out there are running the kind of effective discovery, figuring out that the approach to the service and the ancillaries that go around it, pricing that, and then going back to the client and trying to achieve more of that kind of charging something akin to what it's worth for the client, rather than just cost plus with some freebies on the side. So that has been interesting this morning, and yeah,
good.
I think it's something that will continue to be a trend, to be honest, because I think if firms can get hold of things like I think you referenced earlier on, Natalie, the scorecard, what you're looking for when you're buying services, or afterwards, that kind of stuff is gold dust to the firm, and the challenge is going to remain running that effective discovery up front.
Very few clients are doing that sort of scorecard and telling firms what they want, and it's kind of a bit easy for us to just sit back and as law firms and say, come on, tell us what you want. We should be, you know, we need to be invested in doing it as well. But we do find very few clients are saying, we've got a couple of banking clients, for example, who've been very good at saying, well, this is what we value and this is what we don't value, and it makes it very easy for us.
I was wondering about that, actually. Natalie, Marc, do you share? I mean, it was Natalie who brought up the scorecard idea. Do you share that with your clients, or is there a particular reason that you don't?
What, the wider business being our clients, yeah.
So it's, no,
I think,
yes.
you know,
sorry, I meant with the law firms. Beg your pardon.
Yeah. Oh, the law firms. Yeah. Oh, yes, because I think it's a collaborative document, and so I think it's all very well going, we're going to measure you by these things, but we're not going to tell you what they are. Ha. I don't think that's really kind of a helpful approach, is it, to kind of bring that relationship. So I think it really is a collaborative approach. I mean, it's interesting. I guess I could have read your question and do I actually share it with my wider business? And I think, well, yeah, in the interest of them understanding what it is that we do and us demonstrating adding value to them, it has to be that kind of, open conversation. I think there's a lot of fear in asking questions, right? And fear of the unknown and not knowing. And oh my God, what if we don't have all the answers already? And I think, yet again, perfectionist, lawyer mentality, actually, where is you're kind of almost taking the fun out in an exploratory process, which is what businesses do, and that's how businesses thrive. They go into a situation, we call them hackathons now, and you go, right, let's all innovate and think about something. And actually, if you kind of take away that fear of just not having all the answers and not knowing, and actually going, look, we care enough about you that we want to, and this is both ways. I care about you, law firm, you care about me, client, enough to go, you know what, we want to kind of make this as fun and as pleasurable and, you know, feeling good about something as possible. Because if we feel good about it, it's much easier for us to articulate back to our businesses how great, you know, we are, and the we is just not the internal team, it's the external teams that we work with as well, to deliver an end service to our client, which is effectively our business. And I think, you know, you've got to see it like that. And, you know, I think, as I said, we are afraid to kind of, you know, innovate far outside of a particular box. We talk about innovation in law firms, and we talk about innovation in this space, and it still feels quite kind of contained. And it's like true innovation is, you know, actually thinking differently about things, and you never know what you'll then find out, but you never know until you go through that process, because we don't have all the answers, and I think we'd be silly to think so.
Yeah, Marc, any view on that one? On the extent to which you sort of share what you're looking for with the firms.
Yeah,
with sufficient detail, I suppose, is the point, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, Simply Business currently nothing set in stone. It's very much about, it's what we communicate when it comes to an instruction or the need for legal work. But that's because the model at Simply Business as it stands is that most work is kept in-house. The instructions going out are relatively ad hoc, and I haven't had time yet to put a broader framework in place. So watch this space. Okay. Richard, I'll have an update on that one.
Okay, fine.
Is again, Royal London, you know, just won kind of legal operations team of the year from the Lawyer Awards, and that's because they, come back to my point earlier, the procurement, shout out to Royal London, and the procurement principles have been applied in the legal team. So when I was there, we launched basically a ways of working document that went out to all of our, they had a panel, a property panel at Royal London, and then firms they use typically in other areas such as employment, corporate. And this document, ways of working, was to bring about a consistency of approach or expectation and understanding across the partner law firms and legal services providers in terms of how they, you know, what we expect in terms of contact points and nature of conversation and supplier relationship meetings and going outsourcing certain areas of work as well prompted this. So there was a managed services model that was implemented, but you know, measures of value that we hit upon before in terms of response rates and things like that. I could go on and on. So it was really quite sophisticated, and it did say, if you want to see the detail of where that emanated from, look at things like clock, for instance, as well. But yeah, it really was. I think some of the law firms were quite shocked at the time, those that maybe worked with Royal London for quite a long time, but it was all meant to say, you know, this is how to safeguard an even longer term better relationship. And I think that once they were one or two were beyond that shock of it all, oh my God, what's this? This is quite formal for an in-house legal team to be doing. I think then the value was really starting to be seen by the within the last year or two.
Thank you. Thanks. Another question from the viewers. Nick Lahani asks, and I'm glad he asked this one because it was one that I wanted to get in. What's the panel's view on time recording? To expand on that, interested in the views of the clients on whether they're still being charged by the hour for their legal services, that old chestnut, and if so, would they prefer it on a different basis? In his view, the billable hour values inputs rather than the outcome. Marc?
Yeah, I think Nick nailed it there in terms of my concern always is that it measures input rather than output, and does it lead to good behaviours? But I get from we've all been like Natalie. I was a BLP as a property lawyer for many years. I know that the billable hour it's a useful measure or yardstick in terms of what the value is that's being put in by the law firm. So I'm not there saying, no, I'll never hear of it. I don't want mention of the billable hour. It can be useful, especially at Simply Business, where our model perhaps isn't as advanced as it was at Royal London. It can be useful, and therefore, what the conversation needing to happen needs to evolve beyond the hour, whereby we talk about trying to fix based upon an hour or an agreed hourly cap. Stay in touch. Don't start spending loads of time and then hit me with that surprise bill at the end. So it's communication and other measures and techniques, tactics, if you like, to give a bit of certainty back to the client but whilst understanding that the billable hour does, I appreciate it does have a use or a purpose as a measure, certainly on the provider side.
But more about the management and the communication than another specific option, alternative to the billable hour.
Well, they can. I'd always be up for it. Bigger projects warrant probably an alternative approach. You know, fixing of fees and looking at utilization rates. Law firms always liked when we speak about that, but there are, you know, as I said, there's plenty of other innovative models to look at in terms of, as hit upon earlier, pain share, gain share. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily to be binned altogether, and I wouldn't expect it to be, but time and a place.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I think at the moment, just to jump in there, I think that, you know, the billable hour is so intrinsic to the structure of law firms in terms of it's built into the fabric of how we bonus our fee earners and how we measure input and output and all the rest of it. And I think until there's a big disruption in the market, I think it will always stay there. Although there is obviously a move away from charging on a billable hour basis. You know, a good portion of the work we do, I'd say more than half now, is on a fixed fee or other risk sharing or other arrangement. So there is a sort of a gradual, slow move away from it. But from an internal perspective, I think there's always going to be that. It's so ingrained in the way that law firms operate that until there's a huge disruption in the market and there's the demand from a couple of bigger clients that say, look, this is how we're going to do things from now on, I think it will always have a place internally. I mean, we're seeing some clients. We've got one very, very big client who's now said no to hours at all, and everything is we've moved away to sort of more retainer basis, and we've got some clients like that, but still the underlying mechanism internally is still done on the hourly rate. So
Natalie, have you got a take on that one?
Yeah, I do. And I think, again, it goes back to how you stifle people's creativity, right? Because if ultimately people are incentivized on number of hours, they're incentivized to do as many hours as possible to reach a target to get their bonus. So I think that's what kind of concerns me. I think it's good as an internal metric. I think to answer the question, I think I mentioned before, I do record time. So there isn't a billable hour per se, but there is a metric that I have to work out how much of us as a cost is being spent on particular matters, which I think is useful to know, because it does give you a benchmark to go, do I need to send this out, outsource it instead? Should it be me who's working on it? Should I need a different headcount that's going to be priced at a different basis that kind of makes more sense? But I think the incentivization of targets through the billable hour in law firms, I think, is a metric that should be kind of innovated away pretty quickly, because as we said before, when we look at value, you look at it in businesses now, it's not about presenteeism, it's not about hours. So we take a step back and look at where the workforce is moving. It's to a remote environment where actually it is going to be much more on outputs, because we're not going, because you're in the office the longest, you're the better worker. Yeah. It's actually, well, what is your output? Are you putting in? So I think as part of that way of looking at the world, which the world has moved to, if we look at the law firm model, it needs to kind of move with those times. And as I said, I don't think it's a bad metric, but I think billing a client purely on the basis of the hours you've spent on something isn't necessarily about value. And only you can be honest with yourself as a firm as to what your kind of margins are on that piece of work. And equally for us, we can tell you whether we thought it was good value and whether you are worth what you think you're worth. And that's why, going back to the kind of beginning of the conversation, it is really important to have those conversations on what you value in your law firm. And actually, sometimes I do want the best law firm there is. I know there's a price tag attached to it. But equally, if I know that they're going to take a precedent, or they've got other clients that are very similar to me that are asking exactly the same questions, they're going to repurpose that advice. So I'd really be paying for it in a way that makes it feel like it's been bespoke to me from scratch. Or should it actually be, what, we've got this for you. We're that good. We have a suite of things that are pretty much already there for you, because we have all of the best clients that are like you out there. And actually for you, you weren't the pioneer in it, but we're going to give you a discount on that, because actually it's not that much work for us to repurpose it for you. And then that makes me think, awesome, you're actually really, thinking as a commercial enterprise in a not profit driven way, but in a how to drive value in an ecosystem. and actually get stickiness to your clients going, right, I know you're not going to rip me off. I'm actually more likely to give you something in the future. And, you know, that's where your value grows.
Going from hours to data more generally, obviously got BigHand with us, and I mentioned their pricing tool. How useful are pricing tools to both sides of the relationship, to you, Steve, when it comes to being able to articulate value and demonstrate the certainty that we've been talking about, and then if they are useful as well on the client side?
You want to start that, Steve?
Yes,
yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I think they're very useful. I have I head up a team of 7 or 8 people, but you know, I work in a firm with 450 partners and 2,500 lawyers. There's no way my team can support all of the transactions that we're doing. So the way to achieve wide scale pricing, best practice, and to get those pricing techniques and all those sort of underlying principles, which in itself is, you know, the extension of that then is the understanding of value and all those other things, through a piece of software is absolutely necessary, I think, in order to get that wide scale use. But obviously a piece of tech, you know, as everyone knows, is not in itself going to be the panacea. It's not going to solve all the problems. You need widespread behavioural change and adoption as well. So it's part of the solution, but it's not the entire solution.
And of course, only presumably as good as the data that goes into it as well, and that's you know, actually collected.
and law firms sit on so much data, and my experience in the firms that I've worked at is that it's not utilised enough. There's so much we could be doing with the data to both help ourselves and to help our clients. We're starting, you know, we've got so many projects on at the moment at CMS around data. So capturing information on our litigation, for example, and understanding, you know, have we worked with this, have we done a case with this judge before? What do we know there? Where do we know their sympathies lie? Or, you know, all those sorts of things that we might want to gather, that we're starting to gather now at CMS, and I think other firms are probably getting there as well. But that data is really useful. It's just not utilised enough at the moment, I don't think.
Okay. And Natalie and Marc, are you interested in the pricing tech that law firms are using to try to demonstrate value to you? You know, do you see that? Do you see the certainty or the information that comes out of it?
No.
No.
The answer. Through Perio, which I have a license fee to, so it's a mutual sort of arrangement, then yes, I'm getting a certain amount of insight. You know, it is a good tool. But if there are other things going on in firms, is that proactively being produced as a report or shared? Probably not. And, you know, even if that was an annual thing where you look at a pie diagram and it sort of talks about spend, or, you know, some trends that you picked up on, I think that'd be really useful. But I can't say I've seen a lot of tech tools being transformed into a conversation on value and how performance is being judged.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a hard one, because I appreciate that some providers are better set up for this, and I'd expect it of them. So those that are branching out into different areas, those that have been recently bought by one of the big four, you know, those that have got consultancy arms and what have you, I'd expect a bit more. I'd expect it from them. Look, if I'm a small firm that's all about the law and the provision of the legal service, then that's what I'm paying for, and I probably don't expect more. So it's a case of remembering why I'm coming to you, but the fact that I am coming to you and what your firm represents and where you are. Because if I'm going to pay a large fee for a big, you know, good law firm, and I want the certainty and I want the backup and the support there, I want the trimmings around the edges. And I've mentioned this before, the data, I'm glad Steve's made that kind of made that statement. The data that must be sat on is ludicrous, and I just don't feel the in-house. I feel we're starting to transition. I can see it's in the thoughts of some, but there's a long way to go. And personally, you know, it works the other way. We're giving so much data away, and I'm always happy to share data about, you know, how the in-house function is, you know, how we're structured and what we do and all of this. And law firms are gathering that across multiple clients. Wow, they've got a huge base of information on us, but what do we get back? that comes back to one of my original points, is that kind of that value. There's value in it, isn't there? So whoever nails that one, they're going to be in a great position.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Tom, I'll come to you quickly.
Yeah, indeed. I think Natalie's point was interesting that, there traditionally just has been slow uptake in this area. There has been tech available and people just haven't been making usage of it, which is why perhaps the data isn't making its way into the hands of general counsels and what have you. But I think the last year has been effectively prime time for adoption of these types of solution. And in furtherance of that, we run a pricing profitability survey. We ran it last month to gather what's going on out there, what factors are law firms wrestling with, and we got something back like there's a 30% increase in demand for fixed fees across the UK law firm base, 51% increase in demand for pricing transparency, 64% increase on pressure being applied to rates prior to a matter coming on board, 43% in pressure on bills for work that's already been completed. So what that tells us is in the market, there is an increase in focus on the financials. I mean, very interesting listening to what Natalie and Marc value as their part of the decision-making process. But I think it would be a shame to miss that. Financials do matter increasingly at the minute, and I think the thing that the pricing tools can do is offer these kind of items. So if you're after pricing transparency, for example, what are you really asking for? I really need you to tell me why it's going to cost, what it's going to cost, how you're going to deliver this piece of work, and to involve me in the conversation. These are the kinds of things that pricing tools can actually help you solve. We can use that data in a way that people haven't been able to previously and make sense of it where the data doesn't necessarily have the qualities it needs to make data-driven budgets and all of that kind of stuff that give people cost certainty in a time where we know, perhaps not everyone, but for a lot of firms, they're going to be looking at their budgets and they need an ability to forecast, and they can't afford massive overruns on the matters that they've got to carry out over the year. So that to us is where the tools come in and why we've seen such an uptick over the past, certainly 6 months.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. We've only got a minute or two left, and there's so many other things I wanted to get into some more detail on. I'm just going to throw one quick question out, another one that we've had from people who are listening, from people who are watching, from Kirsty Shenton. Have any of the panel on those alternatives to the billable hour, other specific options, have any of the panel got examples of pricing based on a deliverable KPI on a specific project? I suppose you don't necessarily need to tell us the name of the specific project, but if there's any examples of the KPI at any rate in a line.
Not entirely based, but we are seeing with some big clients that there are holdbacks or there are incentives that are aligned to certain KPIs. Particularly around things like D&I at the moment, which is very important, which is very key to certain areas. Yeah.
And on the client side, Marc or Natalie?
Yeah, I've seen it wrapped up as part of an overall project or instruction. So the obvious ones around kind of provision of targeted training or skilling. So use of kind of mutual technology output or systems. Yeah. So. Sorry, I don't think we can do that justice in the time, Kirsty. But I've seen it wrapped up as bigger, probably on M&A type deals as well, or as part of managed services offerings.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We have run out of time, so I just want to say thank you very much to Marc, to Natalie, to Steve, and to Tom for joining Briefing this morning. And as I say, for the final session of Briefing 5P 2020, and indeed our final virtual event of 2020. So I'll say, I hope we'll see you all again next year. Thank you.